Welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. This is a show that helps pastors think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs. Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the EntrePastors podcast on YouTube. Hey, my name's Jon Sanders. I'm one of the co-hosts of the show, and you're getting ready to watch episode number 59, where you're going to hear myself and my other co-host, Les Hughes, talking about this question: how can you and I pick a side hustle that's guaranteed not to fail? Now, that's a pretty strong word, guaranteed. So stick around, and you're going to find out more how to pick a side hustle that is guaranteed not to fail. Check this out. Well, I'm looking forward to our conversation today, Les. This is episode number 59, and we're going to talk about how do I pick a side hustle that's guaranteed not to fail. We got some powerful words in that title, like guaranteed and fail. Like, we want to focus on a few of these things, but let me set this up, and then we'll start riffing on it a little bit, Les. It's not uncommon for you and I, as we are leading this charge of the EntrePastor journey and encouraging pastors to be out in the marketplace and establishing, businesses of their own, and as a way of escaping that narrative of the starving pastor. It is not uncommon for us to run into pastors who say, Jon and Les, I love the idea of having financial freedom. I love the idea of not being a starving pastor anymore. I'm kind of over that myself, but I don't really know where to start. I have a lot of ideas for things I could do or maybe would like to do, but I'm afraid of picking the wrong one. How do I start? Where do I start? That's a pretty common theme that we bump into from time to time. Would you agree with that? Is that a fair summary?
Very common. And you and I both have coached people long enough to know that question comes up a lot. How do I know which one to choose? How do I know which one's going to be the best? I mean, there's lots of different ways you can phrase it. But one of the reasons we started EntrePastors is to celebrate some things that pastors don't always have, or people with a ministry background even don't always have the freedom to celebrate among the folks that they're serving, especially like at a local church level. And people in the spotlight open themselves up to criticism. And it does, even in a setting where there's a fellowship of 20 or 30 or 40 people. Certainly when you get into the hundreds, pastors, this, if you do anything at all, you're going to be open to criticism. So we get that. And so you kind of get a little bit shell-shocked. Jon, you just get tired of being shot at some. And when you step out and take a risk, like you do when it comes to business ventures, there is that hesitation that, man, this needs to work. Yeah. This needs to go. And I love the fact that we're in a community of people who can celebrate one another, not be jealous of someone else's success, but really lean into it and applaud when somebody gets some wins.
Yeah, that's so good. So well said. And as I heard you saying that, Les, I just wanted to reiterate that it's true. Like, starting a business in and of itself can feel intimidating and scary and risky, like you said. Add to that now the pressure, much of it self-induced, some of it comes from our congregations, but add to that now the pressure of the narrative, all the rules we're breaking as pastors to go outside the four walls of the church and start a business and be profitable and prosperous, and some of those words that make us nervous as Christians and as pastors that probably shouldn't make us nervous. Like, that just adds a whole nother layer of tension and loneliness and fear and risk. And so we really want to step into that a little bit in this piece of content we're creating today. And we will get to the practical part of it in just a minute, about how do you make a decision? How do you choose a path and move forward? But before we get into that, let's just riff on this for a minute, Les. The title of this episode has the word fail built right into it. How do I choose the path that's guaranteed not to fail? I don't want to fail. I don't want to, and on this public platform especially, have people see me mess up. So let's talk about those themes of success and failure, and then we can get to the practical stuff. But what say you to that? Like, how do you define success when you're setting out on your EntrePastor journey years ago? Like, what comes to your mind when you think about that theme of succeeding?
It's a great question. And I really had to redefine some things for me, John, even before I was going out more into the entrepreneurial world, even in the local church level. Early on, I just began to see that when people, and let's just talk about a team, whether it's paid staff or volunteer team, we have teams in our area of leadership, whether we realize it or not. We have teams.
Mm-hmm.
When you have a team of people, and if there's a leader that punishes failure, all right, so I'll use that word for now. But if you're a leader who punishes failure, or who calls someone out, or punishes, in some way, somebody that took a risk and it just flopped. Let's just, so something's just flopped.
Yep.
If you create an environment like that, leader, I'll promise you that you'll end up with people around you who won't do that,
Mm-hmm.
because it's what you reward that gets repeated. And if you reward the person who, with good motives, good intentions, and really probably a good plan, but the results weren't what was expected, and let's call it a flop, let's just embrace that term for a second. But if you say, something, man, that showed in front of a team, that showed creativity, that showed faith. You did a really good job executing that. We might could have communicated it better. We might could have done our homework better. There were some things that happened we couldn't control, but awesome job doing what you could to lead out in this way. If you reward that, let's call it a flop, but you're not rewarding the flop. You're rewarding the effort that's also going to lead to some things having amazing results.
Yeah.
And if you want to foster an environment of creativity and faith and doing new things like that, a lot of that is going to work, but it won't if you just sort of sit on your hands. The same is true in the business world and in this entrepreneurial space. It's that you got to get around this idea of, if I don't get the results that I want, somehow that is a failure. And I realize you've heard all the cliches, John. I have too, to where you're either succeeding or you're learning, but if you think about it, if you have that mindset, there's a lot of truth to that, a lot of truth. And so the way that you and I would define, one of the ways that we would define failure is that we just quit.
Yeah.
Now we can talk about something being a flop when we just give up. But what we're going to say later on in this conversation is there are some other ways to look at this journey, to where when things don't turn out the way that we think that they will, that's not a failure in and of itself. And by the way, one more thing, John, and then I know you want to leapfrog off of that. Remember this: if something does end up being a flop, I mean, let's just say there's something happens and you completely fall on your face. Man, please remember that failure is an event and not a person. That's a one-time deal. That's a one-off thing. And chances are, if you really look carefully, there are some pivots that you could make or some decisions that you can make, and it could turn out to be something completely different that'll give you the results that you're looking for.
Well, and I think that statement, that it's not succeeding or failing, it's succeeding or learning. Like, I really think that's a legitimate statement. I don't think that's just cliche, like to make us feel better. I really believe it's about the mindset and how you frame it. But we all make mistakes. We all have levels of disappointment where it's like, man, we tried something, it didn't turn out how we wanted it to be. But as long as we keep moving, that learning that's well-earned experience and learning that we can, move forward with. And it's not failure, and it doesn't have to define us. It can help shape where we're moving and what decisions we make moving forward. But backing up a little bit to the success, I would be tempted. My natural answer to that would be based upon money, right? Like most people starting a side hustle are doing it because they would desire more income than what they're currently getting. So it would be easy to define it all in the context of money, that success is this amount of money coming into my bank account. But it's bigger than that. It's the results. Like you said, Les, like a lot of times we define success upon the result. So we'll look at certain things and go, I am succeeding as long as I'm seeing this result or that result. And I don't think it's a bad thing to be results oriented. I certainly am in my life. I want results. If I'm investing in something, I want to see a return on that investment. But truly, failure, as you said a minute ago, Les, is quitting. That's really the only failure that there is, because otherwise there's just some things you're going to learn along the way that work better than others. And maybe that didn't work out the way we thought it would. But I had a little insight, Les, as you were sharing something a minute ago. If that's true, that failure really is only when we quit, by that definition, we're probably speaking to some pastors right now that are failing by the very fact that they've never started, that they're sitting here paralyzed with fear and indecisiveness. And in that indecision and paralyzation, they are failing in this moment. I don't say that to cause shame or to make them feel bad. It's just the reality. If you're sitting here letting all of the what could happen and all of the fear and what are they going to think, what's my church going to say, that by the definition, the way we're framing it, is failure. You're failing in this moment. We want to help you win. And so we're going to help tell you how to do that practically. What does it look like to get started? And how do you decide when you're sitting here with all these different options in your mind and, trying to figure it all out? But anything else you want to add to that conversation about success versus failure? Because we do think we can tell someone how to do something, how to build a side hustle that is guaranteed not to fail. But we just have to be clear on what do we mean by success and what do we mean by failure?
Well, if you feel, if you're tied to outcomes, join the club. All right. If you're tied to results, if you focus on results, join the club.
Me too.
If you have ministry background, there aren't a lot of what we deal with are intangibles. How do you measure spirituality? How do you measure really what somebody's relationship with the Lord is, or their obedience or their faith? We look at things that we can measure. What was the offering this week? How many new families were there? How many visits were we able to make this week? And how many of those folks ended up coming to a worship environment? I mean, so we're kind of drawn. I actually had a person, John, that was helping with baptisms one Sunday. This is in a previous ministry that I was in. And I forget what it was. Somebody made the comment about how many folks had been baptized that year. It was kind of a lot. And this guy looked at me and said, well, we're not about numbers, are we?
Yep.
And I looked back at him and I said, well, that one we are.
Yeah, right. That one counts.
Not all numbers are the same, but that one that we are, and not all numbers we can control, but some we can. And that's what we're going to be talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. That's good. So let's speak to that pastor or someone out there. We know we have people in our audience that are not just pastors. We've got people that listen that have a heart for the kingdom and ministry work, even if they're not serving, exclusively in a pastoral role. So don't feel excluded when you hear us talk to pastors. But to that pastor that's sitting there going, Jon and Les, I want in. I know my family would benefit from a side hustle, some extra income. I want that. I desire that. I'm just afraid of failing. So please tell me how to choose which side hustle that was guaranteed not to fail. Let's speak to that pastor, because that's really what we're promising in this episode. So how do you know what path to choose? We've got, I'll kind of describe two different profiles of people, and then you can start talking to them, Les. Right. I think the advice is going to be the same to both, minus just maybe a little caveat. But here's the general profiles. You've got the person who, like many entrepreneurs, they've got lots of ideas. So it's not so much a matter of I don't know what to do. They're like, I've got so much to do, I just don't know which is the right one to choose. But we also have talked to pastors who are like, I truly don't know what to do. Like, I've been a pastor for 2 decades, and that's all I've known. I went to Bible college and seminary. I don't have any other skills to be utilized out in the marketplace, which is completely a myth. That we have a lot of resources to help pastors overcome that mindset that, you have a lot of skills that are valuable in the marketplace. But those are kind of the two big ones. I either have too many ideas or I don't have any ideas. But we would kind of say the same thing to both ones. So let's get real practical. Where would we start with that, with advice to that person that's kind of paused out there going, I don't know which direction to go here?
Well, again, it's a lot It's a lot easier to change direction or get somewhere with a vehicle that's moving than to get one that's dead still, start moving. And
Yeah.
so start moving. And a couple of ideas and these are things that we've actually done, John, and have benefited by them. That's why we know that we're working. We're not the only ones. So one idea is, if you really are starting from ground zero and you don't have a clue, which is not most people, but if you really are at that place, again, this is back to taking action that you can control, not worrying about the things that you can't control. Then I can remember when I first began down this road, somebody giving me great advice. It's a business coach, one of the first one, probably the first one I ever had, John. And he said, just send out 10 emails then it was email. It's been a few years ago. So it could be anything. It could be text, DMs, whatever, phone call, whatever. Send out 10 emails and say, hey, I've got a business coach and he's given me this assignment to ask 10 people in confidence, when someone mentions my name, what do you think of? All right. So I didn't ask them, hey, what am I good at? What am I great at? It came across, it didn't come out as, pat me on the back, build me up some, not at all. I said, just what do you think of when somebody says my name? And from that, you may want to choose 20. If you choose 20 people, then you may get 10 to 15 back. You're not going to get them all back, probably. It goes without saying, but boy, get people that you trust, that you like, that aren't going to take that information and misuse it or use it against you in some way. So we're talking about a high level of trust here, but people that also be honest with you, not just butter you up. So what I noticed was that, and what you'll notice is that you'll get some patterns, and you'll get a few people that start saying the same things. It might ring true with you, and it might be new information to you. Pay attention to that. And that'll give you a clue, at least, of what other people see. You bring some value into their world in that area. Another thing is at the other extreme, if you got too many ideas, then write all those down too. There's some magic about getting them out of our brain and down in front of us where we can see them in a tangible way. So go old school, analog, get a tablet of paper, a legal pad of paper or something, just write those down. If there are 25, look at them, think about them, think about what life would be like if you did more of that. It could be that you just list out during what you do in a week as a part of your role. Okay. If you love what you do but you'd love to monetize it in some way, write out what you do. Visit hospitals, counsel, prepare a message, public speaking, problem solving, conflict resolution. Write those things down, setting a budget, hiring, interviewing, whatever. And then go back and look at it and then narrow it to 10 at first. Don't try to narrow it to 2. But then out of that 10, maybe go down to 5, and then go down to 2, and then maybe 1. Here's the truth, John. Once you get that down to 2 or 3 things that you love, that would be fun. Don't try to worry about whether you can make any money off of it yet. Once you get down to that point, to that few, the reality is it probably doesn't matter which of those you choose.
Yeah.
Because whichever one you pour gasoline onto, that's the one that's going to catch fire.
Yeah, I'm glad you said that, because just in that question of how do I choose the right one, it kind of implies that there's a wrong one. And I don't know that that's really true. I mean, it may be true that one is going to end up being better for you than another. So it may be choosing the best one. But this idea of wrong, again, just has this idea of failure built into it. Too bad for you, man. You chose the wrong path and just messed the whole thing up. I don't think that's how life works much of the time, especially when we're talking about choosing between equally good options. So what I heard you saying, just backing up a minute, Les, what I heard you saying is your advice would be to that person who has lots of ideas, get those ideas on paper. If you've got like 6 ideas for businesses, put all 6 down and think of 6 more, just load it up with what are some things that I think sound interesting to me. To the ones who maybe have no idea, that's where your exercise that you're suggesting, they go beyond themselves to get some outside perspective. What do other people see in me? And where do I start hearing some patterns or picking up some reoccurring themes in that? But either way, to both groups of people, we're telling them to start getting on paper more than just one idea. We're not just trying to pigeonhole you into one idea at this point. put them all on paper, and then have a process by which you start to kind of narrow those down to where you just have a few. The next thing that I would add to that is, and this was an important one, Les, some people that know me well have called me impulsive. Can you believe that, Les?
I'm shocked.
The word is decisive. It is not impulsive. I am very decisive. That's what I tell my wife often when she says I'm impulsive. But so this is easy for me. This is maybe not as easy for someone that's wired to be a processor. But you need to set a date for a decision. I'm going to call it D-Day. Like, you can give yourself some time. If you're a processor, oh, it's so annoying, but you need time to make a decision. That's great. But you can't take 12 months. You can't take 8 months. You set a reasonable amount of time. You have a few weeks that you can think about it, pray about it, get some godly counsel, whatever you need to do, talk to your spouse. All those things are good things, by the way. So we're not encouraging you to rush into a hurried decision, but an intentional decision where you're not giving yourself just time to sit and spin your wheels and waffle. You have a limited, what's a reasonable amount of time, Les? Like, what would you say to that? Not that we're
it depends on what the decision is. I mean, if you're thinking about even just a practical thing like purchases, I mean, if you're toiling and spending 12 weeks over spending $50, that's probably overkill. If it's buying a house, it needs to be a little bit more processing there. And I think here's the thing that I love about our partnership. One of them is that we are both very decisive. You are decisive, let's just call it, on a shorter timeline than I am. So I'm more of a processor because I don't want to be wrong. I don't want to have to go back and, admit that I was wrong or go back and retrace our steps. I just see that as, kind of wasting time. I think you see more, let's get this thing going. Let's make a decision. And you know what? If we don't get the outcome we want right away, we can always change it. We can do something else.
You bet. Yeah, that's good. So I agree. We're not here to say, thus says the Lord, you have 2 weeks and no more, but I am pushing you for a decision. And I think that's wise to say, I don't get unlimited time to waffle on this decision and just keep kicking the can down the road. There is a day coming, and upon this day I must choose, which would then lead to the next thing, and that's choose a course of action. So you've labeled a bunch of stuff on paper. You've whittled that down. You've narrowed that down to just a few good options. You have set a date by which you will make a decision, and then that day is coming that you are going to choose a course of action and make that choice. So I'm challenging you to decide, which then leads to the most important step in all of this. Go ahead, Les. You want to jump in?
Yeah, I'm going to show a resource here because it's perfect for what we're talking about. There's no one set time frame that's going to be a one size fits all, but there is a principle that I like to share that absolutely will help you if you struggle in this area. And it's a resource. If you're watching the video, I'm going to hold it up. So if you're watching if you're not watching the video, the name of it is the 12-week year. And the premise is the author's name. One of them is Brian Moran. The other is Michael Lennington. The 12-week year, basically the premise is that you might be able to get your goals accomplished and your objectives done, that you think it's going to take you a year. You can actually accomplish it in more like 12 weeks. And so you can back that up, and the things that you think would take a month, they'd probably take a few days if you would really, really get after it and not procrastinate. And because what people do is, we set these annual goals, and in October we haven't done anything with them. And so now we get started. Right. And then we think it took a year. No, it didn't. It took you 12 weeks.
Right.
You just waited.
We give ourselves to the end to finally get it in gear, get moving. Yeah.
That'll help you set some deadlines. Yeah.
That's a good resource. And I like that. So you make that decision. The day has been set. The day comes to decide. Now you have to choose, and you're choosing a course of action. And by choosing, that means we're saying yes to one of the things and at least no for now to everything else on the list. And I like the word no for now, because it doesn't mean we're never going to come back and engage another one of those ideas or do multiple things. But for now, we're going to choose one. And then, as I was saying a minute ago, the most important step in this process, in my opinion, is this one. It is to execute on that decision, to take action. Les, the people in our community that we see really winning as EntrePastors who are breaking out of that mold of the starving pastor and building successful side hustles that are far more lucrative than their pastoral income are men and women who are taking action. They're not just sitting and talking. They're not complaining. They're not processing and thinking. They're taking action. So what else would you say for that people in the back that aren't listening to us right now about taking action?
Here's how important that principle is, John. And I don't know if I've ever told you this, because we weren't in the mastermind together when I made this decision. So the mastermind that we're both a part of now, the leader of that mastermind encouraged us to choose a word for the year that was going to be our overall theme and goal for the year, and then to do it. And so for last year, my word for the year was execute.
Get out of here.
And a direct result of that decision to execute is EntrePastors.
Wow. God brought me, this impulsive friend, into your life to execute and make decisions. I love that.
It. Execute. That's how important, not just the word, but the action is, the concept is.
Yeah. No, it's, I want to just preach a sermon at this point, but then we'd have to take an offering. But this is, I cannot overstate the importance of taking action. That is what separates, in my opinion, success from failure. Failure is when we stop taking action. Failure is when we quit. Failure is when we give up. Success is moving forward. It may not be exactly what you thought. It may not be always the results that you were hoping for, but as long as we're taking action in that direction, we're succeeding and we're building, we're growing, which leads to the last thing. And I think this is really important to include in this list, is because this is what keeps us from ever really experiencing failure, Les. It's the ongoing process of evaluating and adjusting. We have permission to make adjustments. We have permissions to say, I decided to do this. I chose it. Some things happened that I couldn't quite control, some variables that I didn't fully see. So I pivoted. I made an adjustment. We thought this would work. We pivoted. We moved down a little different direction. We're constantly on an ongoing basis, we're evaluating how things are going, and we're willing to make adjustments. And as long as that's our posture, there is no failure. Like, we will figure this thing out as EntrePastors. We will figure out this side hustle that worked well for our family, that's profitable, that takes us to a much better place than we ever thought possible. And we just have to be willing to make adjustments and not be rigidly locked into something. So what else would you add to that?
For the backstage portion of our conversation, we're actually going to be pulling back the curtain just a bit and giving some personal examples of how that's happened, as to even look very, very differently in a good way from when we first began this venture. But how cool was it, just to give a tangible example, how cool was it the other day to see on that Facebook post, Gwen, a member of our community, one of the early members of our community and mastermind, standing in front of that bus with all those students of she and Troy's archery school. And that literally was only a thought just a few months ago.
Yep.
And now to be able to stand there, and these people are there at their archery school, they're taking some lessons, they're going to have a great time. They actually paid them. They're earning some income, doing exactly what they love, exactly what they imagined and had really been praying for a long time. But to see the tangible evidence of her taking action, she picked up the phone, she sent out some emails to school leaders, personnel, some archery coaches. Here's what we're doing. Here's what we're offering. Would you be interested? And that was the fruit of it, because she took action. And we see that over and over and over again.
Yeah, that is so well said. And yes, I agree. That was an awesome post to be able to celebrate with our people, seeing them doing exactly what you said, taking action and experiencing the results that they were hoping for. Again, maybe they don't look exactly like what they thought, but still the results of moving forward and taking action. So yeah, Les, as you mentioned a minute ago, and when we go backstage here in just a few minutes, that's what we're going to share with our audience. For those of you that are backstage subscribers, Les and I are going to talk about something that you can absolutely expect when you start taking action. And we've got some exciting stories. We're going to share some things that we're going to share from our journey, even together in this EntrePastor thing over the last year plus now, of what we've experienced as a result of taking action. So stick around and join us backstage in just a moment. But before we wrap things up on this portion of the podcast, Les, I think here would be a practical application for some. Maybe not everyone that's listening to this right now. Maybe not everyone's ready for this step. But I am confident there's someone out there in our audience that is ready for this step. And you and I have built out what we call a pastor's roadmap to financial freedom. And there's several different ways that people can engage with this success path and the coaching that goes along with this. They can do it in a one-on-one, fast-track sort of way where you and I are essentially doing it for them, in a very quick way. We have a cohort that we run every few months where we do it with you. We do it with a group of people over the course of 4 weeks. And then we have kind of a do-it-yourself, go at your own pace. That's part of our monthly subscription, our membership subscription. But the bottom line is any one of those options requires action. And it's an investment that's involved. No matter what level that you want to engage with that roadmap to financial freedom, there's an investment to be made. And I know that there are pastors in our audience that they get to that point and they're like, ooh, I don't know, man. I don't know if I want to spend the money. They see it as an expense. They don't recognize it as an investment into their future. But I don't want this to be an overhanded sales pitch, but I'm going to just say, this would be a good application of this, that could be and maybe should be the action step for some of the pastors listening to this right now to jump in and be a part of that. What say you?
Well, just as we mentioned a minute ago about us, I would say, John, be decisive. Be decisive. You may want to be decisive rather quickly, like my brother John, otherwise known as impulsive. You may be decisive and it takes a little bit longer, like yours truly, otherwise known as wisdom. That was a joke there, John.
Yeah, I'm laughing. I was just muted so you couldn't hear it. So.
but be decisive. So, and when I say be decisive, John, decisive might be, no, I'm not going to do this. That's fine.
Sure.
But just don't stand there and look at it. Okay.
Yeah.
So if that's not for you, it's not for you. Fine, whatever. Find something that is. But if it is for you, make the investment and do it. Our point is, don't just sit there and not do anything. Be decisive, take action, make a decision.
Well, hey, thanks for watching this episode of the EntrePastors podcast. Make sure you hit that subscribe button so you can be notified every time we release a new episode. If you'd like to get connected to other pastors who are learning to think, act, and thrive as prosperous entrepreneurs, then we invite you to check us out on Facebook. Just search for the EntrePastors Connect group, answer a few of our simple questions there, and we'd love to include you in the conversations. And if you're really ready to go to the next level, then we invite you to join our EntrePastors membership community. When you become a monthly subscriber, you will receive access to courses, exclusive community, and coaching that will help you along in your own EntrePastors journey. If there's anything else we can do to serve you, please visit us at EntrePastors.com, and we will do our best to serve you there. God bless everybody. See you soon.